Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'd like to kind of flip the script. You know, I've been a Christian my entire life, or most of my life. About 3 or 4 years old, I became a Christian. I still remember that day like it was yesterday. And I've been having to defend my faith over the years. And, you know, there's people that'll say, oh, you know, Christians, use blind faith, or they believe in fairy tales or the spaghetti monster. And, they try to diminish the Bible and all the evidence. And a lot of times we're spent in the defense. Today, I'd like to turn the tables and put the atheists on defense. Every question I've ever had about the Bible or Jesus, God, anything that comes up, usually there's an answer out there. Sometimes the answer is we just don't know. We don't have enough details. And if we're being intellectually honest, that's fine. You can't prove God exists 100%, just like you can't prove he doesn't exist 100%. So there's certain things that, the answer is we don't know, or based on the evidence, this leads us to believe this. Even Christians amongst each other debate, speaking in tongues or, miracles to this day, the age of the earth, several things even Christians debate. So that's fine to not have all the answers.
So anyways, back to my atheist friends. I want to break it down into 4 objections, if you will. The first one is, if there is no God, who created the cosmos? The second one is, if there was a single cell organism that supposedly morphed into every single thing we have today, how did it evolve? Why do we have different languages? And then last one is, if we came from several people, verse 2, how did that happen? You need a man and a woman at the same time. So the first objection is, if God doesn't exist, who created the cosmos? Christians believe that God is an infinite, timeless, spaceless being who can create. But the cosmos, from my perspective, cannot be infinite, timeless, spaceless. Obviously not spaceless because there was cosmos. So who created it? And where do you draw that evidence from? If we evolved from a single-celled organism, how did we evolve into the human body, which requires the heart, the blood vessels, the lungs, the brain, several areas, all to function at the exact same time in order for us to be alive? You can't do the heart first because you need blood to be pumped to it, so you need blood vessels. You can't do the blood vessels because you need the heart. You can't do it without the heart and the brain. You get the point. So I guess my question is, how did they all morph instantly over millions and billions of years through minor adaptations over time? I guess, which one came first?
Why do we have so many different languages? If we've all evolved over time, millions and billions of years, that doesn't matter because humans still only live a certain amount of time. In fact, back, a couple thousand years ago, the average lifespan was in the 30s. So how could someone and how did language morph into thousands of languages today? And how does that help evolution? If I speak English and my wife speaks Chinese, we're not getting anything done. We'll be doing Pictionary all day long, every day. Now, I don't know about you, but 30 years on this earth is not that long to get much accomplished. So in 30 years, Neanderthals' average lifespan was, let's just say 40. Let's just be generous. Let's just say they lived 40 years. How do they have time to create different languages? Why would they create different languages? How did it start? To me, that requires a lot of faith as well, and explanation. If we evolved from several groups of people, how did male and female biology evolve and sync at the same time? For example, we started from a single-celled organism. How did we create a man and a woman? Because they had to be at the same time to then recreate. As Christians, we believe that we all came from Adam and Eve. eventually went down to Noah and his kids, but essentially we all came from common ancestors, Adam and Eve. Atheists, how do you explain a single-celled organism having to create a man and a woman to then be able to create to future their lifespan? So for example, you have to have a man and a woman to make a baby. And then not only that, you're saying that we didn't come from common ancestors, that there were several. So my mind doesn't comprehend how that happens. You go from one single-celled organism that morphs over time and eventually creates several different types of humans. If we evolved into apes and then the apes evolved into humans, at what point does the human become, European, Chinese, this, that, whatever? How do they? Essentially what I'm saying is I have a lot of questions. I have more questions than I do answers. And one of these in their own might be easily explained by an atheist. They could say, oh, well, the languages came about through migration patterns, and when the earth was splitting, people got lost, which doesn't make sense to me. Why would I all of a sudden change my language if I'm English to Chinese to Russian, those are massively different. Now English to Australian and UK, that those are close enough. Okay, I could see that. But to then create different letters and languages, and that to me just doesn't make any sense. I don't know how that benefits evolution, how that benefits the argument. But then when you combine all of these, so where did we come from? Where did the cosmos come from? Where did people come from? How did we have several people at the same time? Why don't we have apes in between still around? So like if it takes millions and billions of years, you would think that we would still have people evolving, and that you just don't see the in-betweens anymore. And yeah, there's a couple fossils and they could kind of piece it together, but even then, that's still millions of years apart. Why don't you have the ones in between? Because technically, if we're all evolving, you should still see evidence of it to this day. And then the different languages and the common ancestors, to me, there's just too many things that it's hard to argue if you're an atheist that you don't have any faith, in my opinion.